All right, and we are recording. Welcome to the first evening ever happy hour, everyone. Nice to see you all. How is everyone doing since the morning? Since I think I have now seen all of you since earlier.
Very good. Very good. Added lots of words today.
Lots of words? Did you get dressed up and do a fancy dinner, or are you doing that later?
No, I am dressed up. I'm going to my fancy dinner. This is as dressed up as I get.
Okay. And you look lovely, for the record. You look absolutely lovely.
Yeah, and I worked through what I was going to do next and figured and looked at my old notes of what I decided I was going to do next, and they look the same. So I think I was just, doubting myself. And now I'm going to go forth and write words.
Yes. Now that we're actually able to connect, it feels like we should all do something good. Now, did anyone have any specific question for this evening?
Oh, now that I have to think about it.
Nice face, Eileen.
Crystal mentioned with regard to my red pencil blurb, something that didn't necessarily make it into the recorded evaluation, but it's maybe not an uncommon problem. I write stories about relationships, but there's always other relationships or other stories inside my stories. And so the question, I guess, is generally about how to evaluate and make sure that the balance is appropriate between your A story and your B story. In the case of the manuscript I'm working on right now, the heroine has a little friends with benefits fling with another character, and then that sort of resolves itself, and then in the meantime she's getting involved with this other guy, and then that's the main relationship arc, but the other story ties into her character development and backstory and all that stuff. And apparently when I wrote my blurb, I didn't give the hero enough emphasis so that the reader understands that that's the more significant part of the story, I guess. But
do you have it handy? Can you read the blurb to everyone? If not, I will dig it up because I think I have it somewhere.
Where do I have
Did
to
that
go
sound like a threat? Because if you don't, I'll find it. Like that was how I meant that to sound.
No. Okay, so I had a paragraph, log lines, short blurb, and then I had a longer thing. So
read the short one.
Okay, so
this would be like the back of the book blurb, right?
Well, that's a good question. I tend to put more on the back of the book, but I'm never quite sure how much. So my short, I've got two different versions of the short one.
Well, read one and then pause and then read us the second.
Okay, so one version is, if there's one thing footloose, independent search and rescue worker and parkour travailleur, I can't pronounce it actually. It's what you call someone that does parkour. Nikki can't tolerate, it's a bully. She just can't stand by and watch some innocent getting pushed around by a small-minded, mean-spirited jerk. That's why when she meets the tormented giant Didier Legrand in a French village, she has to do something about it. She doesn't expect her sojourn to be so long, complicated, or painful, nor to meet another man who's just as determined to rescue her as she is to save everyone else.
And your second?
An independent search and rescue worker on enforced vacation cycling across the south of France will go to great lengths to help a shy giant blacksmith win the love of a local seamstress, even forge a friends with benefits affair with him to boost his confidence and image. But when a cycling accident renders her injured and helpless, she's far less willing to accept the care and support of a fellow tourist who's taken a special interest in her. So you see the problem.
So
two versions, but both with the same problem.
So with both of those,
the hero gets very little attention. Yeah.
Well, and I guess the question is, when I hear hero, heroine, I think romance.
Well, it's romantic for sure. It's just messy because that's the kind of romance I write.
Yeah. And that's,
So
I mean,
there's a definite romantic, there's a cute meet, there's the whole, everything.
yeah. So out of curiosity for other people, did either one or two pull you in, or did you bump on either one or two? And if so, why?
I like 2 a bit better, but
And what was
one
it
was
about 2?
more concise.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe the details pulled me in a bit more. Like you were more specific about, and the fact that she had an accident, and that introduced the hero a little bit more than just some vague, mysterious thing that happened. He actually wanted to help her, and that, I guess, kind of grabbed my attention. So I just wanted maybe one more line about him.
Well, I have a longer version that has it's, I don't know, I'm not sure I would call it a synopsis, but it's not really a synopsis. It's a long blurb, but it does these names. So I started the long one with the first version of the short one as the first paragraph, and then it flowed into a little bit more elaboration about how the story unfolds. But then I went and edited it. So it starts off differently yet again, which is Nikki Ballantyne loves a thrill. When not riding helicopters and climbing mountains to rescue stranded hikers, her idea of fun is leaping from tall buildings and flipping through the air. She's on an enforced holiday from her search and rescue job, despite her reluctance to take time for herself. While cycling across the south of France, leaping from thrill ride to adventure, she stumbles upon a new rescue project. On the eve of the annual medieval festival, she arrives in a small plus beau village in the south of France and is immediately drawn into the magical, historic atmosphere, especially once she meets the local giant and artisan Didier Legrand. And then I have 5 more short paragraphs that tell you a little bit more about Didier's unrequited love and about her friends with benefits solution for him. And but still, even after all of that, I don't say much about my hero.
So I guess here's my question. So Leslie, you were going to chime in before I start yakking. Did you have anything you wanted to say?
I was just saying that, I mean, they both had components. I like, I think in the short one, you say something about meeting the giant and something about not letting that happen, but you didn't say anything about what was happening to him. So that kind of grabbed me a little bit, like, okay, so, you say she doesn't like bullies, but when she meets him, she knows she has to do something about it, but she doesn't say about what.
Yeah, the longer version explains how he's bullied. And,
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I like the conflict that you've added in the second one, but yeah, I think I like that you've got the hero as a reason now. He's going to help take care of her. So I think I like that detail of the second one.
In the second version of the short one.
Yeah.
Short version.
Yeah, where I say she's far less willing to accept the care and support of a fellow tourist who's taken a special interest in her. Right. Yeah. So, but I don't say, like, I don't do the A-B thing where I got Luke, blah, blah, or what's his name? Yeah, Luke, blah, 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 blah. Like, his backstory. And
I
really like him. I don't know.
Oh, what's his name?
The funny thing about this story is that it grew up from the place, and it's not exactly magical realism, but it has a kind of a vibe because of the medieval festival and the fact that this guy's a giant, and so there's an almost Shakespearean quality, and then she gets involved in an almost Cyrano de Bergerac kind of way in his love affair, and so I'm having a lot of fun with that part of the story. But the romance arc is also really good. It's really working for me, but I think it's being overshadowed a little bit by all the fun stuff that I'm having in his village in France. So that's the root of my question, I guess, is this balance between these different story elements. And clearly, if they're not coming through properly in the blurbs, then maybe the balance isn't right in the manuscript either, I guess. That's what I'm wondering.
Well, and here's a question that I have. So I'm going to also, readers bring their own thing to a manuscript. So I'm just going to own my little piece of this. Is when I hear the blurb, it feels like, and excuse my French for this, like, is she giving Didier a pity fuck? Like it all, the giant.
Oh, Didier, yeah.
Well, whatever, what's his name? The other guy. Because it reads a little bit, and I don't know if that's just, and that's where I'm saying, like, my own kind of personal things, but when we talk about, like, she meets this guy, he's being bullied, so she's going to give him friends with benefits, and that's like going to give him the confidence he needs to go after the woman he loves. But meanwhile, she's falling in love with another guy. So I guess I'm saying this saying I really like complicated relationships. So I'm not saying it has to go. I'm saying I need to understand more how her relationship with him is somehow freeing her up, is awakening something in her, is making her realize, like, does he come forward to her and break up with her and be like, of course you're in this relationship because it's safe. You're not actually in a relationship with me. And she's running from Luke. Like, there's something where those two stories, I think for me, the problem is I'm not certain where they're coming together.
Yeah. I can tell you, but I can see it's not coming through at all in the blurb. It's what she's doing isn't a pity fuck, but it isn't that she's deluded, and like, it's not really a relationship. They're not in love or even pursuing anything. It starts out as a fake romance,
right?
Without sex.
Yeah.
Designed to change his image in the town.
Right.
And
it's the easy
sorry, what?
I didn't hear.
Easy A.
With Emma
Yeah.
Stone, right?
And then in the process, they become very close friends, and it emerges that he's very insecure about his size physically. Giant. And she's because she's very athletic and acrobatic and strong and agile, she's extremely comfortable in her body, not so much in her emotional life. So for her, it's kind of no big deal. But when they discuss actually having sex, it's more cathartic or therapeutic. It's not really a pity thing.
Yeah, and I'm saying this as my own bump up, right? Where it's that thing, like, if it was reversed, so it's the awkward girl with the guy, and he's like, I'm really comfortable with my body, you're clearly not, so we're going to sleep together, and I'm going to provide you with this thing that you can then go on and have her, like, that just feels a little icky to me. I think that's what I'm bumping on. And then for me, the question is, particularly when we think of romance, which, let's be honest, is that heightened love relationship, how is it then different with Luke? Or is it just this new guy that she's now with? So that, I think, and I say this saying, I like complicated stories. So I don't want you to feel like, because I know you've bumped with other people who are like, you can't have a romance where she sleeps with two guys. And in traditional romance, you're going to have a bump. Bonnie's like got a feeling about that. Bonnie's like, yeah, she's fine. Sleep around. Go ahead. She's good at
Sleep
that.
around. Yes, it's sexual revolution. But yeah, I must admit I bumped on that because the focus of your blurb seemed to be her relationship with the giant, and then the hero was an after effect. But I think if you just even remove the friends with benefit, just say that she uses her own her relationship with him to help him get the girl he wants. and then they can
Yeah,
read
so-
about the thing, and it kind of flows and understands, but it doesn't necessarily need to be in the blurb, does it?
Well, that's my problem. It wasn't in the blurb. And then I sort of bounced the whole premise off the romance group, and they were like, you can't do that at all. And I'm like, okay, forget it. I'm not going to use the word romance. I'm just going to write my book. And
Do that.
I think it was Crystal, but somebody else also said, just make sure your readers know ahead of time that this is going to happen. Like, or that you're giving them a strong hint that this is going to happen, because you don't want people coming halfway through the book and finding out that she has this casual sexual relationship with the first guy, when that's not really who the romance arc is with. He's a friend. That's it. And there's no confusion about that. And so my
let me
new
back
blurb
up.
responded to that.
Let me back you up and ask you a question. What is it? What's her name again? I forget her name.
Nikki.
What is it that Nikki has to learn and grow and change in this book?
That if, well, in 20 words or less.
I love putting it so much easier when you're not the writer. When it's like, let me put you on the spot.
There's a whole backstory thing. She feels responsible for people who are in need or weaker than her. It's the whole rescuer syndrome thing that relates to her backstory, and younger brother, and a bunch of stuff. And but because she lost her brother, she feels herself emotionally vulnerable if she lets anyone close to her. So she's got this kind of rescuer identity, but at the same time, she keeps people at arm's length. So,
okay,
the whole thing about her, the whole thing with Didier, the giant, and her relationship with him is her in her identity, right? Rescuing people, being kind of selfless, but also stubbornly independent and not really emotionally engaged with people. And then the whole thing that turns around in the story is that when she's injured, this guy who she's had this gradual attraction to, and he's taken an interest in her, but she's been pushing him away. Suddenly he's there taking care of her, and it makes her mad as hell, because it's forcing her to confront this conflict inside her, which is that she doesn't want to let anybody in because they will leave, and that will destroy her. She'll lose them somehow, like her brother, like she lost her brother. So
okay, so this is off the top of my head, so this is not good. Preference with that bracket. I think you need to pull this blurb back into her. So when Thrill Seeker Nikki Search and Rescue goes on forced vacation, she does what she does best: rescue other people. While keeping giant Didier as a friend, she helps him find love and build his confidence by even starting a romantic relationship with him, as long as the romance is never real. But when she's in this accident, she meets this other person, and now these are real feelings, real romance, and she must decide who she allows to help her or not. So that you're keeping... I'm just suddenly realizing, because I'm watching my own video, wow, I talk with my hands a lot. Okay, so she's keeping the focus on her, that she meets him, because right now it's all about she's doing this great thing for this giant. She's so selfless, but we're not seeing that that's actually her just keeping everyone at bay. She's helping him, but that's because she can do that without being emotionally involved.
Yeah.
But when she has to, like he allows her to help him in this way, but I think maybe he has to call her on her thing, or he has to
he
do
does.
thing.
Yeah, definitely does. Yeah, because
then
they get very close, and then she pushes him away too. Yeah. But because they've fallen for each other, that makes him it hurts him, and it makes him really mad. And so he goes away, and then he comes back, and he challenges her, and whatever. Anyway, all that. So in the process, she realizes that Well, and he makes it fairly explicit that vulnerability is a part of this relationship, but you can't.
So is it something like when thrill seeker Nikki, blah, 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 helps this guy meet his love by starting a relationship, like I might not even use the term friends with, but starting a relationship that keeps him at bay. Sorry about that. Then so people trying to reach you all the time. When she tries to start this relationship by keeping him at bay, he breaks it off with her and challenges her to have a real, like there needs to be something where
I don't know if you which thing you're talking about, but it sounds like you're blurring the two, so I'm confused because she doesn't actually have a relationship with the giant.
But she does.
Yeah, she does. But it's I understood at the outset that they're just playing, sort of, that like that they're not involved, right?
Yeah.
And it's just a short-term thing that they're doing.
But I think it has to be, and I don't know if it's that I'm bumping on the friends with benefits, but I think that there has to be this thing around, she's starting a relationship with him, but like, there's something about the friends with benefits that feels, I think, dismissive, right? Like, I think of that as like, oh, we just get together to screw. And again, maybe I'm like this moralistic Puritan prude. So that's why I'm definitely leaving it open if other people want to weigh in. But she enters a relationship with him and it's like, I'm helping you build your confidence and all this
because
kind of stuff.
Safe.
But it's safe. But then he's cutting that off because he wants to have a real relationship and he's challenging her to have a real relationship. So I feel like what's missing in that short blurb is right now the focus on the giant feels like she's just doing him this big favor. And that kind of makes me not like her.
Mm.
Do you know what I mean? Because it feels like, oh, you poor man who's insecure. I will give you the glory of me, all this. I'm going to give you a little piece of all this. And then that's going to make,
like
that's going to make you feel better.
Right?
Yeah. Like, and I don't think it, like,
she doesn't seduce him.
Yeah.
They're friends first. And she's staying with him. And as she gets to know him, she understands more about his predicament.
Yeah.
And she proposes the pretend relationship, which is for the public. And in private, they're just friends. There's nothing. And then as it comes out that he's a little bit, more than a little bit shy, 30-year-old virgin and all that, she just kind of tries to coach him through just being comfortable and at ease with his body. And somehow that evolves into, well, let's just do it and see what happens, right? So it's not I don't think it comes across on the page as a pity thing.
Yeah.
But I can see how it would give the wrong impression in the blurb if I said that. But then I'm stuck with the other problem, which is if that sort of, if those sort of complications are in the book, then there might be a certain segment of romance readers that are going to be shocked or offended or
and tomato, like you're going to have some people, Bonnie's already like, meh. You're going to have some people who aren't going to like that. I wonder, just even setting up, again, keeping the focus on her. When she does this, she starts a fake relationship that turns, I'm trying to think of what the word is, because it turns a little bit real, but she doesn't fully commit, like that's still friends. I'm struggling with that little piece of it where it becomes clear that that it's mutual, that she's not doing him a favor. But maybe in teaching him how to love, he challenges her that she's not able to do that, right? So she's this one who's saying, let me show you how to be comfortable with your body and who you are. But she herself is not comfortable with emotion.
Yeah, so actually that does emerge. So while she's in this momentary intimate relationship with him, he never stops being in love with this other woman.
Yeah.
And in the process, she is envious of him, of the of that desire to be really connected and to pursue that relationship with this other woman.
So here's an odd question. Do they have sex once, or is this a multiple thing?
It's up for debate. There's one actual scene, and then after that, there's the implication that they practice a little bit more. It doesn't have to be in there. It could be in or out, depending on.
Because I guess maybe that's one of the things, again, and I'm owning my own prudishness here. Like, but you tell me, like, he really loves this other girl, but he's sleeping with this other woman. I sort of feel like he didn't really love the other lady that much.
Well, they've known each other all their life, and they can't get started.
Yeah.
Because of his hang-ups and his.
Yeah. And so, I'm just owning my own weird thing. Like,
well, it's a weird story. I mean, that's interesting that we're.
So hang on. So Bonnie has a thought. She has a finger raised. Go, Bonnie.
I have a thought. Yes. It seems like it's just an extension of her wanting to save other people. So it's she's got a bit of a hero complex, and she maybe takes it a little too far, maybe further than she expected, and she's almost using this as a way of avoiding commitment, avoiding facing her own problems, right?
Yeah.
So maybe emphasize that she's avoiding her own relationships and going the easy route, even to the point of friends with benefits, and that's fine with her. That's as far as she wants to go. And this other man challenges her to be more.
Yeah, you've nailed it, Bonnie, because that's exactly her modus operandi. Okay, so she dates, she has flings, but she doesn't have any relationships ever because she can't.
It's a defense, right? Just we'll have friends that are relationships.
Yeah, but what she sees in Didier is this really deep commitment to this woman that he can't seem to get started with because of his fears, and that even though he's being initiated, let's say, with her, he never deviates from his desire to pursue a relationship with Emily and make that real and like have a family and go all in, right? And so the part of her that's not happy with this identity that she's created for herself is envious of that, because there's a part of her that's very deeply lonely, right? That doesn't, because she doesn't have real relationships. So
okay. And I'm still, trying to wrangle. So stay with me, because I know it's probably a little frustrating, but we're gonna get this, Marianne. We're gonna nail it. So when this woman, this parkour thrill seeker, blah, 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 is willing to take any risk as long as it doesn't involve her own heart.
Oh, that's good.
Write that down. That brilliance may not come this way again. She's on this forced vacation. She meets this guy.
Risking her own heart. Yes. Okay. Yes.
She meets this guy. She will help him by teaching him how to love, by initiating him into the world of something, romance, sex, I don't know. And then I think it needs to be clear that ends, and then this thing starts with Luke. That there is this transition between, she thinks she's helping him, but he's really helping her. So I don't know if maybe there needs to be a line around, she always rescues people, but it turns out that the giant is the one that rescues her by teaching her what you really have to learn, so that when she meets this guy, she has this challenge.
Yeah. It's not that black and white,
No.
She meets Luke first.
Yeah.
And there's instant attraction. But she doesn't want that.
Yeah, she can't have that.
But
So-
the blurb doesn't have to go into the gray areas. The blurb can be more black
all
and
gray,
white. And
Bonnie. It's all gray.
no, I know my blurbs have to be more black and white than all the gray too. It's just you're simplifying the story, and it's not completely accurate in your blurb.
No, but
Yeah.
you want you want the right emphasis to be there so that people understand that this is a story about a woman who learns to be vulnerable so she can have love too and not just adventure.
So is it a case of, she learns to risk her heart, but she never allows herself to have a real relationship, which is why the friends with benefit relationship with Didier, where she's able to teach him this and this, is perfect for her until it no longer is, or until she's confronted with this other thing. So again, that we're seeing, because I think what's missing in the initial 2 blurbs that you have is her growth. It reads like 3 separate stories. Like, she's on this great vacation. She's going to rescue this guy, which she does. Then she meets this other guy who has to rescue her. So I think it has to be that connected, that this relationship with this fellow is what teaches her what she needs to know.
It primes her for wanting more than she's allowed herself to have until this point.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then when she's actually physically vulnerable, which she never allows, and Luke's there and wants to care for her because he's interested, like really interested in her, she has to accept that give and take as part of.
And that risk, right? Like, you let someone care for you, someone can stomp all over your heart. Fact.
So that she needs to, so her relationship with Didier primes or prepares her to understand the fact that being vulnerable is.
Yeah, there's something there around the idea of she's most comfortable with relationships that are fake, which is why, is it Didier? I keep saying his name wrong.
Yes, Didier.
Damn French names. Okay, Didier is perfect for her because she can be at a distance and it's not real. But when she interacts with Luke, there's this chance to have this real relationship. So that's what's so something around that idea of she's comfortable being the rescuer. She's comfortable keeping everyone at a distance. But when it becomes real is when she's really scared. It's scarier than jumping off a 4-story building and bouncing around.
Mm. Yep.
That's what scares her.
I know what I'm doing. I just can't explain it. I mean, what you're expressing is really, that's it. That's the essence of it right there. Yeah.
Good. It's so much easier when it's not your story. Yeah. So I think what you're looking for in that description, which I think will hit what Crystal was talking about, which is, if it's set up otherwise, then we feel like what the real relationship's going to be is that she thinks she's just friends with benefits with Didier, but then she realizes she really comes to love him. So then when you pull away and you're like, nope, that's not what that is. I think that's where maybe you're getting the romance bump. So it needs to be that idea of clearly that she enters in this mutual relationship with this guy to help him learn this thing. She thinks she's the teacher, but he's the one who has more to teach her. So that when she meets the true romance, or when she's then able to see what's actually available to her. So it needs to have that through line of A happens, which leads to B, which allows C to happen. And right now, for me, B and C feel like separate stories. There's what she's doing to help him, and then there's the fact that she has to learn to like this guy and be open. And in the blurb, the connection between those two isn't made. And so then I think prudish readers bump on like, why is she messing around with this guy? She doesn't even does she even care about him? So it needs to be like, this thing is what she needs as well, even though she doesn't recognize it. Yeah.
She gets something meaningful from that, even though she thinks she's keeping a nice, safe distance.
Yes.
So the result of all of this is that the blurb emphasizes the heroine's situation even more. And poor Luke. Poor Luke.
Does he have rotating chapters, or is this all in her point of view?
Well, I originally wrote the whole thing from her point of view, and then I decided that he was underdeveloped, that there wasn't enough to understand who he was and why he was fascinated with her and why she would, be attracted to him. And so I started my whole revision process in the spring with a bunch of research about his character and his backstory. And so what I've been doing as part of the revision is inserting scenes from his point of view. So there aren't as many. There's maybe a third of the scenes are from his point of view. But it still emphasizes Nikki more because she's also got this complicated thing going on with Didier, plus the backstory. But anyway.
So I guess I wonder, you just, even in the blurb, again, if it's like when, risk taker, blah, 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 she's in France, as long as she doesn't risk her own heart, she meets this guy, she thinks she's helping him, but she has more to learn. When Luke, and a line or two about what drives him, is trying to help her, she must finally allow herself to be vulnerable, etc. So there's just maybe a line or two more about what's driving him in that story. And I think, Marianne, you're bringing up a great thing, and I know Bonnie has, she and I have had this discussion about when you are querying or you're writing a blurb about a book that has rotating protagonists, how much attention do you give to each of those?
Yeah.
And it can be challenging because if you're focused on one, then the reader thinks it's solely their story. I wouldn't worry too much about yours. Like if his is really a third, then I'm not overly concerned in the same way. Like if you look at something that has, kind of one or two, like you don't always necessarily get the full thing, but maybe a line or two more just to let people know he's got something that's driving him.
No, I think I'm doing a good job of fleshing him out.
Yeah.
And his motivation. And I even contemplated writing some scenes from Didier's point of view, but to me, because he's a very colorful character, it would skew the emphasis away from the main character.
Well, and whenever you're doing multiple point of view, the biggest question you should be asking yourself is, why does the reader need this other point of view?
Yeah.
And the fact that it's interesting or fun is not a good enough reason. So there has to be something else that is being explored in the story that merits that they become a point of view character.
Yeah.
So
Anyway,
for that reason, I would,
And logistically, it's a bit of a problem because I need to resolve his story with one or the other of my other characters there as a witness, as a point of view character. But I can do that. I figured out I can do that. So I don't want his point of view in there.
I would lean away from that. And in the blurb, I would just add maybe a line about, Luke and his background. Just so we have a touch of that.
Yeah.
Now for anyone else, so hello, Alyssa, nice to see you. Anyone else have questions about sort of blurbs or synopsis? Not that they're willing to share out loud.
I'm just wondering about Bonnie's people with the other character in their brain. Have I got the right story? Yeah. How does that come out in your blurb? You don't know.
Well, I have dragons and humans. So yeah, I picked one dragon because I actually have more than two point of views, and their stories are quite different, and then they come together. So because they're quite different and totally different things are happening to them, they have different stakes. I was able to do, one character and then the other character, and then draw what brings them together
in the blurb. So it's
in the blurb, yeah. Mm-hmm. That doesn't always happen that way in my science fiction. they are in different areas, but all of their stories are intertwined. It's a lot grayer, so not as easy, dry cut. So I actually just focused on one character for that blurb because that's the main plot, and the other two characters were subplots.
So
It's really basically what affects the main plot.
So how many people saw or read Big Little Lies by Leanne Moriarty?
Not yet. No.
Oh, it's good. Definitely go and do it.
I know.
So I'm going to read the blurb. I just looked it up on Amazon real quick. So she has, I want to think there's 5 point of view characters in the book. So it rotates between them. So I'm just going to read the blurb. So it says, sometimes it's the little lies that turn out to be the most lethal. A murder, a tragic accident, or just parents behaving badly. What's indisputable is that someone is dead, but who did what? Madeline is a force to be reckoned with. She's funny, inviting, passionate. She remembers everything and forgives no one. Her ex-husband and his new yoga wife have moved into her beloved beachside community, and their daughter is the same kindergarten class as Madeline's youngest. And to top it all off, Madeline's teenage daughter seems to be choosing Madeline's ex-husband over her. Celeste is the kind of beautiful woman who makes the world stop and stare. While she may seem flustered at times, who wouldn't be with those rambunctious twin boys? Now that the boys are starting school, Celeste and her husband look set to become the king and queen of the school parent body. But royalty comes at a price, and Celeste is grappling with how much she will pay. New to town, single mom Jane is so young that another mother mistakes her for the nanny. Jane is sad beyond her years and harbors the secret doubts about her son. But why? While Madeline and Celeste soon take Jane under their wing, none of them realize how the arrival of Jane and her inscrutable little boy will affect them all.
So that's a fairly long back cover blurb.
It is.
Because of all those people.
Yeah. But I think it's useful, and we can learn a lot by other writers. So, of course, this is the first one that popped into my head, but going through and thinking about what are some other books that have multiple points of view and how are they handling that on their blurb can be a really good way. And having read this book, it's like there's so much going on. You should read it or definitely see the show. It's fantastic. It's got Nicole Kidman, Reese Witherspoon,
right.
Laura Dern, like it's really good, is to see how they've just sort of summarized a lot of big things into that. So there's basically 3 paragraphs per character when I'm looking at it on the screen.
3 paragraphs?
Or 3 sentences per paragraph,
for
each character. So there's kind of a setup, and then there's 1 paragraph for each of these 3. So she's taken out, she's focused on just the 3 most important characters, and that's it.
So even though I don't have point of view scenes from the Giants for Didier, does he warrant a sentence or 2, do you think? So
No.
You understand what, no?
I don't think so. I like where you have that she's helping him find love. That's what's important. He's insecure. He's helping to find love.
Because in my longer synopsis, I do say, what do I say? Constantly tormented by local bullies and terrified of his own oversized shadow, Didier needs her help to win the love of a local seamstress.
That I don't mind.
Just 1 sentence.
Yeah, I don't mind that.
Okay.
All right. So I want to thank everyone for coming to our evening happy hours.
You totally hogged all the airspace. Sorry.
That's it's all good.
Quick question before we go.
Of course.
I'm just wondering about titles. And so if your working title, if there's other books with that same title, is that something you need to be worried about if they're in completely different genres, or?
So I can tell you what I go through the process with my own publisher. So first off, are you planning to submit to other people, or are you going to indie publish?
Not Indeed, no.
Okay. So first off, just always knowing that whatever your working title is, they may change it anyway. So Don't overly concern yourself with it. What I always look at is I do look up to see if other books have that same title. I look to see how recent they are. So something that just came out last year, I might be more likely to kind of shy away from. If it's a few years old, I'm less concerned. I'm less concerned, as you mentioned, if it's in another genre. because again, you're less likely to bump. Certainly don't pick something that is, I'm writing Larry Daughter and the Philosopher's Rock. Something that's going to be so close to something that is a big, well-known title that, you know, it just feels like you're trying to kind of ride on that coattails. But there are certain things, like particularly one-word titles like Unhinged, or I have a book called With Malice, and there's actually a fair number of other thrillers that are called With Malice. Mine was the only YA thriller with that, so that was kind of where that came from.
I'm surprised sometimes how many books exist with identical titles.
Oh, yeah.
Because I know there's no real...
You cannot copyright a title, so that is something to be aware of. Like, you don't own the title, so someone else may have it. You're looking for something with a title, something that's catchy, something that people will remember. If it's too long, you have the problem of the person at the bookstore saying, I can't remember what it was called. It was something, handmade something. So having something that's succinct, that kind of tonally will tell people what they're looking for. But that was a very long answer to your question, which is, I would not worry if your title is the same as another book, provided that you're not choosing a title that is a super well-known title. Don't go with Gone with the Wind or something like that. I wouldn't choose necessarily something that maybe just came out and is really popular. So other people are reading another book by somebody that has the same title. I might be more likely to kind of shy away from that. But otherwise, I would not worry.
Okay. So Hillary Clinton wrote a book with this title. So the title I want is Stronger Together, and it's YA historical fiction, ancient history.
Yeah. I think you'd be absolutely fine. Absolutely fine. Because also the cover is going to tell people that, oh, Hillary Clinton had nothing to do with this. So that will be, because there'll be an Amazonian warrior on the front or something that will be like, oh, that's what we're talking about. So that will give people a clue. So I wouldn't concern myself with that. As long as, again, if you're going traditional publishing, is just to know there's going to be a whole sales and marketing team that's going to weigh in about what they think is going to give you the best bang for buck on title. So they may want to change.
But having a decent title kind of gets you a better chance of getting picked up in the first place, right?
I think, I think it's one more piece that puts a little shine on things. Like, I don't think if you have a crappy title, some agent's going to be like, I loved the sound of that, but screw it, I hate that title. Because they know it can be changed. But it's another way, if you do have a good, strong title, that it can help draw someone in. Because it is one of the things we notice when we're picking up a book. So, there can be a title that sort of catches us and makes us go, So I would think about that.
Thank you.
All right. I am going to close us out of here. I have another meeting in a different Zoom room, which I'm hoping will work better than this one did. And I will see all of you either next Tuesday morning or next Tuesday evening. If you have a synopsis or query or something you'd like me to take a look at, I'm happy to do that and we can tackle it. And otherwise, I have some interesting things to talk about with subplots. So that may be another discussion for another Tuesday.
Definitely.
All right.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Have a good night, everybody.
Everyone.